What's going on, everyone? We got an incredible podcast here today with Joe Reiben, founder of Mandala Exchange, as well as spending years as an attorney in the crypto space. So tons of information we're going to learn here today about the regulations that are coming up for crypto.
But we are underway, and I do mean underway.
I wonder why fund managers can't beat the S&P 500? Because they're sheep. And sheep get slaughtered.
Because I know more than anybody.
Cold winter has apparently not affected the orange.
All right, folks, we got a great show today. As always, got to give a quick shout out to our sponsors over at StockTwits. Go join millions of investors to talk about stocks, crypto, a whole lot more. It's where I go to get a pulse of the market. Obviously, there's so many distractions on other social media channels, and so it's kind of nice to get away from it all. And plus, they give us the trending tickers of the week. So thank you so much, Tommy, over at StockTwits, giving us QQQ. Obviously, everyone on FinTwit has some exposure to QQQ in the tech. And so absolute wicked destruction here on Friday. Went from 345 to 325. Tesla had some nice earnings number. People seem to like that before coming back to earth here at the end of the week. If you're not following Elon on Twitter, please do, because he's absolutely gunning it right now. He's going after Twitter left and right. It's pretty hilarious. Disney, if you guys have not checked the news at all, the don't say gay conversation is really taking a tumble here for Disney, back and forth between Florida and Disney. You know, I can't see them picking up Disney and moving it elsewhere, but there's been conversations that they may go there. I know Colorado's looking to bring Disney World to Colorado, but we'll see here. I know they're getting struggles as well, obviously, with their Disney Plus. You saw what happened with Netflix. So a lot of these streaming giants are going head to head. Plug has a new deal with Walmart, selling 20 tons of liquid green hydrogen each day. Biotechs with XBI taking a downturn. And in the crypto world, we got Luna X became the 6th largest cryptocurrency, sitting at $31 billion in market cap. So quick episode with you this week. I know Tony's traveling back, but I was able to sit in the booth with him live in New York City. So it was great to sit down with Joe. Let's head on over to the interview. Let us know what you guys think. Should be having a lot of fun guests coming up in the next couple of weeks. We got Tony here in living color in New York City. So this is Joe. This is actually our first time we're here with Joe Reiben here from Mandala Exchange. And Joe, you've done a number of different things too. So I definitely want to have you introduce yourself to all pounding the table, as I know you've been involved with a number of different projects. You do legal within crypto. And so we'll definitely get into some of the legal things that are coming down the pipeline in this world. But welcome to Pound the Table, and definitely introduce yourself. I know you have a lot to share.
Sure. Thanks, guys. A pleasure to be here. Thanks, Avi. Thanks, Tony. Joe Reiben, pleasure to meet you guys and be on the show. Yes, CEO of Mandala Exchange. Also worked with a number of projects globally to structure them both business and tax-wise in the crypto world since 2015. Had my own firm in Denver since that time frame, 2015, 2016, where we've been working with these projects to make sure they're, legally compliant, as well as structured properly for tax and business purposes later on down the line. So how did I get into crypto? Started trading 2014, 2015 era, right? Got in pretty early, was thankfully, and really took a more serious role and more serious interest in it, besides hodling and trading a little bit here and there, when I started my law firm. A lot of projects asked us to do things such as draft contracts, structure their businesses, their ICOs, their STOs, things of that nature, as well as do their privacy policies, opinion letters, and just a lot of their content internally, so they could be, recognized as legitimate projects, especially back in 2016, 17, and 18, right, in the ICO craze, when there were so many rug pulls and so many projects that kind of went under. The need for legitimacy was paramount, really. And so I got into it like that. Actually got into Mandala in the first iteration of the project as the outside counsel. The project was kind of abandoned by the founders, and I stepped in with a few people that were working for the first iteration of the project and rebooted it, stepped into the CEO role. And here we are 2 years later with a partnership with Binance Cloud, as you can see behind me on my screen, and just kind of chugging along quite nicely, building our user base, building our daily volume, building our revenue streams, building our partnerships, most importantly, which we'll talk about. And just, overall, just trying to bring a good compliant exchange to the cryptoverse where people can feel safe trading.
So talk to me a little bit about the compliance. And again, coming from my world now, working within Prime Trust and being kind of more incorporated with that from my day job, I have some background, but kind of walk us through from like a high level. If someone's has these high in the sky ideas, they want to create a crypto app or a crypto exchange, for example, like what are some of the high level things that people should be thinking about?
Sure. First off, what week is it? Crypto regulation changes every week. That's the first issue. Outside of that, a couple of things you should really think about for any project. First off, seek business help if you don't have people that are really good at structuring businesses and forming businesses from even from the normal financial world at the top of your ecosystem. And make sure, this sounds self-serving, but it's not. Seek good legal help, please, because some of the things you need to start a project competently are legal opinion from a qualified law firm, stress qualified, because a lot of law firms hold themselves out to be crypto, knowledgeable and blockchain knowledgeable, and they're really not. So do your research and find lawyers that you get along with, that you can see a long-term partnership with and be a client of. And we'll give you a good opinion and a good structural background in terms of the regulatory and compliance world, because it does change every week, especially depending on what jurisdiction you're in, right? There's different compliance laws for the EU, for Asian countries, for the US, for South American countries, African countries. It doesn't matter. But you need to stay on top of all of that, depending on where you want to work and where you want to function as a project. And then, of course, one of the biggest things when you're looking at regulatory and compliance, make sure that you have people on your staff or even yourself that know what's going on and have the time to follow it. That's one of the biggest things I've had to learn, is to not be on top of it every day of every week, and make sure I have law clerks and other lawyers at my firm that are following it for me. Because, with the 12 to 14 hour days, which really is, with the exchange, I don't have time to go and randomly research if, Turkey or, Algeria or just any country, doesn't matter, changes their regulatory laws and we're operating in that country. I need somebody to stay on top of that for me. So, and that's obviously no slight at those countries. It happens every country, every week, like I was saying. So it's just what it is.
I think we've come a long way too. I remember when I started trading crypto back in like 2016, 2017, you could do just arbitrage between different locations, right? So like I could buy, I forget, I was doing Bitcoin and ETH swap pairs. I would buy it on one exchange, send it to like a Korean exchange, swap it out for the other coin that's trading at similar value as like, if it was Bitcoin, that was a discrepancy, I would, do it that way, or ETH, however it was. And you could just swap it around all day long kind of situation. And the regulations were just like, maybe you had to wait 15 minutes sometimes. And so it was not really that big. And I know even today they were talking about changing NFT tax laws. So in the US, so I know that like every day now, whether it's like the Fed saying something or, Elizabeth Warren or whoever it is in the admin trying to say something, right? Coming and they want a central bank, digital reserve currency. So I'm just wondering, what do you think it's going to go? Like, what's the outcome here for like how much control they can really have in a decentralized system, right? Because we have Secret Network, we have Tornado Cash. Like, what can you really do?
And that's a great point you bring up. I remember the old days, Bitstamp, Bitflyer, OK Exchange. I mean, we would just incessantly trade back and forth. You had Bittrex. I mean, old Kraken.
I have like
Poloniex. Oh my God. I mean, it was like, it would just, you're right. You would just ARB and just send it wherever. No KYC, no anything. It didn't matter. I mean, just send and trade. You're right. Repeat, rinse, repeat. Those days are coming to a close. I will say that regulators in the EU, in Asia, and the US are agreeing on a number of principles, that being limiting transaction values that are non-KYC, limiting withdrawal limits that are non-KYC. They've really cut that down. And that's something that, we expect to change in the next 12 to 24 months. Our exchange does sit at a 2 BTC, no KYC mandate, kind of like, industry standards. Some are tightening up right now. We do
Let's
see
break that down though for our users, because I know what that means. Like, I don't even think Avi knows what that means. So
I do know what that means.
So what that means is you can withdraw daily up to 2 Bitcoin, the value of 2 Bitcoin. So basically sitting at about 80 to 82,000 right now. You can withdraw a day and transact without needing to KYC or know your customer on our exchange. Will those laws and regulations change? Absolutely. Are they starting to go in that direction? Yes. But, we in the crypto industry, it's when you're told to do something, you do it eventually. We haven't received any word yet from anything outside of an advisory. But when it does go into law, yes, we are going to be compliant and of course follow that. We're not trying to skirt regulatory law. That would be insane, especially for somebody like myself that's an attorney. I don't want to lose my law license over something like that.
Right. And that brings up a good point too. So, and it's very bullish to me, in my opinion, is like you go from an attorney knowing what is happening and knowing kind of what could happen down the line here for some of these laws, right? And yet you're the CEO and you're starting your own exchange here. Right. Where are you guys located? I know you're physically located here in the US, but the exchange, in terms of who you can offer your service to, is that global, or where is that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And actually, it's funny. We are in the US. We're a mostly US and Canadian based team, but we have the US actually geofenced out right now due to regulatory concerns.
Right, okay.
Our exchange is actually housed in the Seychelles, which is an African country, and it does operate globally. And it operates, the reason we have partnered with Binance and Binance Cloud to run our exchange is for a number of reasons. The funds are safe. If you guys are familiar with Binance's SAFU policy, that basically means your funds are safe on exchange. If a hack happens, the wallets are locked down and any funds that are taken are restored, through Binance's reserves, which is a big reason why we partner with them. That security and that comfort is great there. We also get all their liquidity and order book depth. So we have almost 1,200 pairs on our exchange, plus pairs that we are listing outside of Binance. And that is the largest number of pairs for any spot exchange in the world, obviously, because we get all those Binance pairs plus our own listings. So that was another huge advantage for us. And we get the liquidity and the order book depth, which is also important, which means if you go to trade, you can always be confident that if it's a pair on Binance or a pair on Mandala, you're going to not be either rug pulled or have no liquidity to trade. It doesn't matter how much you're bringing to the exchange, right? Unless you clearly own like 100% of a small token or some crazy number, you're going to have good order book depth with minimum slippage. So you're going to have rates that you're looking for. You can lock in your trades at the prices you want, and you can be confident that those prices are going to be there if it's a reasonable price for a token.
So that actually just brings me to something I just was reading about yesterday. So MEV bots are like, just for users, like they're just pretty much cracked bots that just do everything in crypto, that just trade art, get swaps, get the spreads and everything. But basically, so I was reading about how people can consistently get what is called sandwiched when they're trying to buy or sell like any type of coin on one of these like decentralized exchanges like Uniswap or whatever it is. And so what basically happens is the bots will front run you, buy that coin, and then you set your slippage to 2%, say, like, let's say the coin's $10, like you're buying, a $10 coin, and you set 2% slippage. So the bot sandwiches it, jacks up gas. So you don't get your order. They get their gas on that order. And then they get to execute the order. And then instantly they sell it into you for whatever you're buying. And so they do that thousands and thousands of times a day. And so I didn't even know that was really a thing that was happening. And just reading, someone wrote a really nice thread on Twitter. So I guess I just wanted to know, how does a brokerage like house differ from that, from those decentralized exchanges where those bots, like, can people run bots at all on exchanges and anything?
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually do partner with multiple. I'm glad you brought that up, because we're about to launch, actually tomorrow morning, we're launching a big competition with our second or third automated trading community, Good Crypto, that we've partnered with. And we do allow bot trading on our exchange, right? The thing about that is with the spot exchange and with an exchange that's so healthy with like our exchange because of the Binance liquidity, there's not going to be really a slippage, right? There's going to be order books that really match up. So you're going to have to really, run a bot that is, however you preset it, right? Whatever risk tolerance you preset it to, whatever you want to do through the Good Crypto app. And when you come onto the Mandala exchange, you set your preferences, you set your buys and sells, whatever market limit, custom orders, however you want to set it. But you're not going to get the same run and front run too much that you're going to get on DEXs, because obviously on a decentralized exchange, if you guys don't know how it works, just explain it for the audience. There are peer-to-peer transactions that are really anonymous. There's no KYC or AML requirements for them. That is going to change, just so everybody knows that trades on decentralized exchanges, the SEC, CFTC, and other regulatory bodies in the EU and Asia are going after them right now. So be ready for that in the next 6 to 12 months. There will be different regulatory.
Those are the best, man. You can just have so much fun. Like I've been in there.
You can for now.
Bitcoins and just
obviously I don't know the details. I'm too far removed, but you're probably closer and can't talk to all of the details, of course, but. From a high level, and it's funny because we talk to people up from Wall Street and so forth. And the reality is they're just trying to figure out a way. Ultimately, the government is trying to figure out a way to tighten it and slowly but surely, like things like I think it's Monero is Monero, and there's like Pirate Coin and things like that.
Network. And like so those kind of things, like I could literally scam somebody, take the cash, send it through Tornado, send it through Secret or whatever, and then put it in another wallet. It just shows up randomly. You can't, the transaction's like burned as it happens, so it doesn't exist anymore. And so like that's why I was wondering, just I always hear like, oh, crypto regulation is coming, but then when you really think about like how blockchains work and how like those protocols on the blockchain work, I find it hard that I don't think that they're ever going to be able, unless they just completely shut those things down. Right. Mm-hmm. And then, but then if they do, right, like I could make another one, like the Silk Road, like I could still order drugs online if I wanted to. So, you know,
that's the thing. And just to get back to the bot trading real quick, and then I'll definitely go into that point. You know, bot trading exists, like I was saying, on DEXs and centralized exchanges, or CEXs, CEX. But it's more, I guess, regulated on a centralized exchange because of the fact that there is no anonymous transactions. Everything's immutable on blockchain. And there's not going to be that front running and that slippage. I mean, there is going to be to a point, because there are bots that do arb, like you were saying, arbitrage across exchanges, and they do include decentralized exchanges in there. But if you're primarily trading on a centralized exchange, the bot is really just more automating your trades. So you don't have to stay up 24/7 in a market that never sleeps, and will trade for you when it hits price levels that you preset it for. That's the bigger picture for bots on a centralized exchange. Now, getting back to your point about, will the governments always be a step behind in regulating crypto, in putting legislation in place and regulations in place that are sensible? Yes and no. Legislation, no. There are a number of bills that are either in front of Congress or have been passed, like Biden's executive order, the Loomis bill, and there's a bunch of state legislature that is being drafted in the U.S. and a bunch of us are working on in conjunction with legislative bodies that is sensible, where it's going to help the consumer, help businesses innovate in the U.S. Because at the end of the day, it's a tough balancing act, right? I'm the CEO of an exchange. I want looser regulation because I want to be able to operate in the U.S., but we still can't, which is really frustrating for a U.S.-based team. However, I want sensible regulation in place for mass adoption. And so people are incentivized to get into the industry, because that's going to grow the whole industry. And myself and others as early adopters, or even as running businesses that are larger in the industry, it's important to bring in, more clientele, a bigger client base, a bigger audience. So that's always a balancing act. Now, sensible regulation, what does that mean to me? Not to get too wordy, but it means, oversight in a reasonable way, not trial by fire, where you impose sanctions on companies, post-mortem, or you sue companies or fine companies into the ground like the SEC is doing. I don't think that's appropriate in any way, shape, or form. I want a regulatory framework that's easy to follow, and companies can follow a blueprint to register, to get licenses if appropriate, and to operate. And that has not been shown to be done by any regulatory body in the U.S. so far. And I think that's even within the government. You're seeing people like Tom Emmer, Jared Polis, and others, just fight for the common person and the common business, because they don't understand the value of tech in the U.S. Now, is there a lot of overreach globally right now? No. And that's the interesting part. A lot of U.S. businesses are going overseas and establishing corporations in tax-friendly and tech-friendly jurisdictions, so they can operate freely and get away from the, kind of the overreach of U.S. regulatory bodies right now. I do think cases like the Ripple case are going to kind of flip the script a little bit if they go as planned. And
can you give a sorry to interrupt you?
Yeah, no, you're fine.
Ripple, I feel like everyone kind of hears that there's something going on with the SEC with Ripple. Can you just give the TLDR version?
Sure. TLDR, basically 2 years ago, I think it was September or November 2020, really, when the case picked up in earnest, basically deemed by the SEC to have been an unregistered securities offering, the TLDR version, and sued as such, right? They tried to fine them. They started a big court case. Brad Garlinghouse and the crew over there at Ripple, at XRP Labs, as multiple entities are fighting back in court, and as they should, because there is a lot of doubt as to whether they were an unregistered securities offering. And as the case has developed, it's interesting. Myself and most attorneys, honestly, in 2020, except for very few, as well as the Ripple kind of clan, thought that Ripple was a clear-cut case of being a security. The more evidence that has been released, the more this case has evolved, the more my view has turned to, well, I don't think XRP is a security anymore. At the way it was distributed, the way it was released, and at least there's a reasonable doubt as to it, right? So I do think that at some point what's going to happen, there will be a settlement where both sides can claim a victory. The SEC is going to get a large payment as a settlement because Ripple can afford it. Obviously, they're a multi-billion-dollar company. And XRP will be deemed either no fault, which is not admitting to being a security or not being a security, and will be able to continue on their way as a bank transaction settlement system, and a very prominent one. Let's be honest. They're threatening such institutions as SWIFT and other set in stone really institutions around the world as a bank settlement payment token. So I think the TLDR on that is it's going to change the crypto space and the crypto sphere. It's going to really shape it in the US, whatever that case settles out, however that shakes out. And I think it's going to be ultimately very favorable for crypto companies. So, I mean, that's my view on it.
Flooded Ripple.
Well, you can't really buy it.
I did. Trust me. It's funny. I flooded Ripple for years. At the same time, I've always held a bag because
You have to flood your own bag.
Man, I
you have to
share this
remember.
story. I can't make this up. This is summer 2017. Just got back from Portugal. I had just heard Nate Ginsburg, shout out to my buddy who taught me about Bitcoin. And I was laughing. I was like, what is Bitcoin? What is all this? But I was like, my friend's smart. He's doing very well.
He's a gambler.
Let me, I'm a degenerate gambler. Let me throw some. So I did, but I was at a bar that summer when I got back in New York, and I was talking about Bitcoin, and sure enough, someone's going to turn around, right? And this guy at the bar is like, buy Ripple. And he's like, you guys are talking about Bitcoin, buy Ripple. And I was like, what's Ripple? He's like, it's 4 cents. Just trust me on this buy it. It was 4 cents at the time. And it got up to $3. What is it? $3, $3.20 or something was the high.
Yeah. I sold some up there. I'm not going to lie. I sold some up there.
And I got fortunate with Litecoin. I remember, I think it was Charlie Lee was right. And he said he was leaving. I was like, that can't probably be good.
Nope.
So I ended up selling close to the top on Litecoin. That's what I made the most money on. But so, we're not going to ask you to pick coins or tell, say which ones are happening.
I won't.
But yeah, no, of course. But, I think it's very interesting for our audience, right? Because I think there's two fields. There's folks like myself that are I'm 34, Tony's 25, right? He's his generation and younger can play with these apps. They can figure out what to do with crypto. But I think what's really interesting coming from my world now, working at infrastructure company for crypto, is you see the ubiquity that is about to come from this, with the ease of these exchanges, the ease and everyone's going to start to be using these different apps. But I guess being on your side, how do you see a world, can 5,000 exchanges exist, right? Or is it going to be the top 20 exist? What are your thoughts on that? And unique coming from someone
that's a great question. And that definitely feeds into kind of, obviously my area of the space. I see a lot of room for a ton of exchanges. I mean, think about how many countries there are, right? What are a couple hundred countries in the world? And you can you can definitely see a scenario where there's 4 or 5 exchanges in each country. It already happens with the bigger countries, more than that, right? There's plenty of room for them. Obviously my goal with Mandala, I would love to be another Binance. I'd love to be another KuCoin, but realistically, if we can't get there, I still want to be an exchange that offers globally competitive rates and global and great services to our user base and take users from everywhere, right? And I'd love to be admitted in the US. We've obviously applied for a securities exchange, and we've filed a lot of the MTL, which is money transmitter licenses, in a bunch of states thus far. We're about halfway through the US. But we're the things that we're working on because we want to be able to offer globally. But yeah, there's a lot of room for a lot of different exchanges. I mean, we're going to see millions and millions and millions of people on board over the next couple of years, right? And potentially, probably, I would say up to next 5-10 years, up to 1 billion people on board onto exchanges. Now, I mean, that's realistic because, you see out there probably 1/8 of the world's population transacts in currencies or stocks or bonds or, mutual funds or hedge funds. I mean, or some kind of investment. I would say probably 1 out of 8, 1 out of 10 people definitely invest in something. So crypto where it is and blockchain where it is, I don't see it as unreasonable. Now, do I think there's consolidation at the top of and name brand recognition? Of course there is. We're not crypto.com. We can't go out and buy the Australian Football League or buy the Staples Center naming rights.
Yeah,
I mean, we're not FTX. We don't have our patch on every Major League Baseball umpire's jersey or, buy sports leagues and sports teams. And that, we're not at that level, unfortunately. We
you are on pounding the table, right?
And I am on pounding the table, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that. But I mean, the goal is to make your indent where you can. Like we just ran our first larger scale real life campaign all throughout Sydney. We found a niche in Australia where I've done a few different podcasts and put some articles out, and it really did gain some traction. But things like that, you kind of develop your niches and your country/continent, obviously of Australia, where you gain some traction and you do, put your name out there and market it and put competitions out there that are fun and accessible for the, we did a lot of advertising actually on college campuses and bars where the younger generation would be and go, because we found out that's the most, by dollar value trading, the biggest trading class, let's put it that way, in Australia. So, you definitely play to your audience. So yeah, as we grow out, that definitely is something we look for. But yeah, there's consolidation at the top, but it doesn't mean these mid-level exchanges can't survive. There's plenty of people to go around for everybody. And, that's the thing. Every trader is different. They're going to find something they like on an exchange, and it may not be the Binances or the KuCoins of the world or the Coinbases of the world. They might like their custom exchange because it speaks to them for other reasons.
So, and it's interesting you say that, right? Because it's becoming, and there's always people that are saying that the world is becoming obviously more global, and we've seen that from a business standpoint. Now from a actual fiat currency standpoint, like does crypto bring this world economy together, right? And so what does this mean for not necessarily even just the dollar, but like these global currencies, and will all these countries adapt their own US digital dollar that they're talking about?
Yeah, actually, absolutely. We see a lot of central bank tokens being discussed, central bank coins being discussed. CBDC stands for central bank digital coin. I think that's going to be a phenomenon that is implemented worldwide over the next 5 to 10 years, because let's face it, most of our finance is digital anyway. At this point, obviously, what is it? What is a debit card? What is what is a credit card? It's all digital, right? Venmo, yes, Cash App.
Send money anywhere. It's in 2 places at once. So that's
exactly. And that's the thing that people forget about when they say CBDCs won't work. It's just the next iteration of what we already have, really. Now that will be side by side with crypto. I definitely believe, because people are not going to suddenly ditch crypto to go to CBDCs, right? It's a different asset class. There's 2 trillion plus in the crypto industry at any given time, sometimes up to 3 trillion. And it's just growing, right? More companies release tokens, NFTs, exchanges, platforms every week, really. So it's one of those things that you see not reversing just because a CBDC is released. What they will do is probably integrate those tokens into their ecosystem and use them. So yes, the world is definitely getting smaller in that regard. And I do think that paper money, while it won't totally phase out, it will become a lot less used as we move forward, right? Because, let's think about it. What do governments want to do? They unfortunately, they want to oversee and control and, kind of have a hold on every transaction. Right. What is cash? We know cash is a way to, quite honestly, bigger than anything else. And this is a knock against crypto, but it's not really. It's a misplaced argument when people say crypto is a way to evade the law. Well, really, cash is a way to evade the law. Let's be honest. Way more than anything else. It's used for that, than any other form of payment in the world. So governments, as they want to tighten control, if that's an effective way to do it, is to really start getting rid of cash and using a central bank token. And that's what I see on it. Now, Exchanges, of course, with interoperability and all the different, partnerships they make these days, that is also bringing the world together. What we saw 4 or 5 years ago in the dawn of crypto exchanges that were big, it was very regionalized, right? I mean, you'd have your Asian exchanges, you'd have your EU exchanges, you'd have your American exchanges. Now we're seeing all these companies. A great example is FTX. You have FTX Global and FTX US. You have Binance US, Binance Global.
Mhm.
You have all the big exchanges do both. So there really is a coming together of regions. And I think some of the biggest developments that we're going to see is not just partnerships with decentralized exchanges and centralized exchanges, which is something that all of us are working on, building those partnerships out so that we have a full ecosystem. But also with lending products, with yield bearing products, with staking products, that's all being integrated onto these exchanges. And we are definitely seeing the ecosystem world shrink into, because everybody wants the best, latest, and greatest technology. And shout out to full stack devs, by the way, and blockchain devs. Oh my God, what they're developing on a daily basis
right now.
I was asking you the other day. People are always asking, "Do I know any crypto devs?" And I'm like,
devs.
"Sure do," but they're busy. Like,
they're worth their weight in gold.
Yeah.
They are worth their weight in gold. And the innovative coding that they're doing and development that they're doing. Oh my goodness. Like,
I saw an ad on Twitter for there's some big firm, I forget which one it was, but one of the bigger ones, like in crypto, we're looking for a Solidity dev. It was like $750 to $1 million a year. And I'm like, okay, that's about right.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting too, because I see this is almost, I make parallels to like the internet 2.0, like, these new companies that are these ICOs. Like, I think maybe me and you had this discussion, but like the IPOs that we've traditionally known in the stock world, like that's going to happen with these companies, these chains, these tokens and coins and these cartoons, like they're being, the NFTs that Tony's talking about all the time.
It's
like
insane.
These cartoons are going to actually hold the deeds to homes or,
look at Bored Apes.
I am glad you brought that up. Glad you brought that up, because a lot of people don't understand that NFT is what they are representation. And this is important to realize for NFT projects that are launching as well, because I work in this space a lot as well. NFTs are a representation of real world ownership a lot of times, and fractionalization of that ownership. A lot of industries are using them, whether it's the real estate industry, which I'm actually advising for a couple of projects that are building out, basically fractionalized securities for huge homes. I mean, we're working on, homes that are worth $75 to $100 million that are going to be fractionalized. And, it's a whole other discussion we can get into another time with what's basically debt-free equity, because you don't have to sell your home. You don't have to refinance. You don't have to mortgage it. You sell an NFT that represents a fractionalized interest in your home, register it as a security. There you go. You can access equity. But you can sell cars, boats, sports memorabilia, all kinds of whatever you want to sell on chain. And you can tokenize it or NFT it to kind of show ownership, immutable ownership on blockchain of that real world asset. And that is where the NFT market's going. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that ties nicely into securities laws and into really understanding that you do have to file when you launch an NFT of this nature. You do have to file with a regulatory body. A lot of companies make the mistake up front. They don't file. They don't get legal help. They don't get, business advisory. Sorry, I have a dog knocking on the door.
Now we hear it sounds like you got the Humane Society behind you.
Yep, it's a 110-pound Doberman. It's okay. But I think the biggest thing is seek out legal advice from qualified business firms, qualified blockchain firms, because once you go down the road and you start offering your token or selling it as an unregistered security, it's tough to unwind. It really is tough to unwind. And the longer you let it go in your pre-sale, the longer you let it go in your ICO or STO and not registered and not filed properly, the worse trouble you're going to be in. Right? All it takes is one upset investor or one investigation, and you can totally bankrupt and torpedo your company. So I'm glad you brought up NFTs, but that's where they're going. It's not going to be art for everyone except for the top artists.
So you brought up a good point. And I always joke about that but like, it's all on a blockchain. The irony is everyone thinks, like what you were saying before, is crypto is used to buy drugs, do things illicit. But like the reality is like everything is on some chain, right?
Right.
And so ultimately, like, where does this go? Like, where do you think everyone's going to end up in orange jumpsuits? Because like there are a lot of companies running, things legally and by the book and going through the right licensing and things like that. But like, there's certainly a lot of companies that are trying to get around the system right now. Is that going to like catch up, do you think, to a lot of these companies, or do you think the government will say, hey, you have until 2 years to become compliant, otherwise you will be thrown in jail?
That obviously is a great question. What we've seen globally is the latter. We've seen countries put out advisories saying, listen, if you are a registered business in this country, you have 12 months or 24 months or whatever it is to properly register, properly file as a security if you're deemed, even if you think you're a security, and seek legal opinions, right? Something like that. Well, just a kind of an overall audit, really external audit from qualified auditors, whether they're legal or business or compliance of the company. Now, that comes back to the U.S. trial by fire, where they're just kind of throwing enforcement actions and regulating after the fact. That's stark contrast to what is going on in the rest of the world. And I do think the U.S. will eventually kind of morph to what's really globally accepted, where companies have a time frame to become compliant. Even if they are, there'll be notices sent out and say, listen, you didn't do this right. Let's sit down, have a meeting. And if it's found that you're trying to act in good faith, there are companies that are scams and then really can't excuse it, right? We all know BitConnect. We all know companies that have done that. We all know rug pulls and Ponzi schemes that have been out there. But for the most part, I do think crypto companies operate with good intentions. I don't think it's a vast majority that try to scam their investors or their token, really not investors, but token holders at the beginning of a project. But, in order to, have an ecosystem that works and have mass adoption, we do need that framework. It all comes back to that. And it all comes back to having a set guideline on where and rules on how to properly file, how to properly, follow them. Step A, B, C, D, E, and then, okay, you can run your company, right? And that's happened with every other financial system and every other financial asset class. I don't know why it can't happen with crypto. I do think there's a piece of it where regulators and the government itself doesn't really understand it and is scared that it will take over the pieces of the regular financial system as they know it. And that is a legitimate concern because it will. There are people that would rather transact, in millions of them, that would rather transact in crypto than in dollars or your euros or the pound. And that's just going to happen. But, if you put something that's easy to follow or at least understandable in place, that, because I'm a lawyer and I've been doing this since 2015 and I have no idea sometimes. And that's absurd. That shouldn't happen for somebody that's been in this industry for 7 years. So I have companies come to me sometimes and ask me, and I'm like, well, I think you should do this, but, I don't know. And that should never happen this deep into an asset class, 12 years in, 13 years in.
$2 trillion asset class.
Yeah. It's so, yeah, I think, there's a stark contrast between the US and most of the rest of the world right now, which is why companies are migrating overseas. And I think the US is starting to notice that. And, I think there's going to be a harsh reality that's dropped on the regulatory bodies in the U.S. and the powers that be, even from inside Congress. They're going to be like, hey, we're losing we're losing jobs. We're losing our brightest people. We can't.
Losing dollars too, right? If dollars are moving to exchange
tax dollars
overseas,
tax dollars, income, revenue for the government, all of it. It's absurd.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. So my boss always says, and we can kind of wrap it up on this, is like every single company at some point will be a blockchain company. Like, maybe there's not every single company, but like, would you agree with that statement? Do you see, in the next 5-10 years, many companies to some capacity incorporating blockchain into their business?
Of course, because if we look at blockchain, what it is at its core, it's a distributed ledger system, right? It's an immutable ledger of transactions or occurrences that is kept forever, right? So the way we always used to keep, back in the day, a pen and a pad, then I guess a calculator for, computation, then, computer storage for, this is the next iteration of this, right? Quantum computing, of course, will eventually come, but now the next 10, 20 years, 30 years before that's mainstream, yes, companies will definitely be blockchain companies because they need to store that data, whether it's on a cloud or if it's on a blockchain or, no matter where it is, right? I mean, the most successful blockchain company in the world, I'll argue, is Amazon Warehouse Services. Always has been, right? And they're impeccable. They never miss a drop. I mean, they're amazing, and they never miss a time frame for delivery. They're incredible. But yeah, I think companies are definitely going this way, and we're going to see more tokens popped up because a lot of companies tokenize because they understand it's an extra way to raise revenue and boost the company valuation. And we're going to see a lot of projects turn to blockchain and to this, and to these devs that are already in short supply, to build themselves out into the 21st century infrastructure that's moving forward, like the Web3 infrastructure of the world.
No, Joe, and you joked with us before the show. We could talk all night, and I can see why now. Yeah. Like we could have literally
we covered nothing.
I know. We could literally go for another 10 hours, and I put myself on mute halfway through, and I was like, we should bring them on every month.
Let's do it. I'm down. I'm always down.
This could be an ongoing thing because, as you mentioned, crypto laws are changing constantly, and so it could be cool to like bring you on once a month just for a 30-minute update of like what's happening in the space, or every other month, whatever works for you. Because I know you're very busy, but
no,
this has been fantastic.
You're in New York. Let's call it a weekend update. No, let's not do that.
Exactly. We're cheesy enough as is. Thank you so much, Joe. A pleasure bringing you on to Pounding the Table. As I mentioned, this will hopefully be the first of many of these, but pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you. On. And just a little shameless plug here for all the Mandala Army here. We're going to be launching our Good Crypto automated trading competition, like I said earlier in the show, and the next week, as well as launching SafeMoon next week on our exchange with local tokenomics and a SafeMoon trading competition. So be ready for that. Keep your eye out. And please come trade with us. Please come hang out in our Discord, the Mandala EX Discord, as well as Telegram, and we'd love to have you.
And follow him. What's the Twitter handle? You got to give him a follow on Twitter.
At Mandala X EX. MANDALAEX.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Thanks so much, Joe. We'll chat soon.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
I'm trying to climb the mountain till I need a few accountants. Stock is rising, perfect timing. I'm in Brickle with the tribe. Shawty sliding, she want sushi, she want eel sauce with the rice. I just peel off at the light, took her heels off for the ride. Don't say real talk, just a lie. I'm a real one, I provide, yeah. Drip on 100.